Shalom, peace be unto you, for the kingdom of heaven has come near unto thee. I am your fellow servant, a disciple of Jesus Christ, a servant, a slave, a student, an adopted heir. I wanted to read Psalm 46 to you today and talk a little. So, Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear. Though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof, Selah. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. The heathen raged, and the kingdoms were moved. He uttered his voice, the earth melted. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow, and cutteth the spear in his under. He burneth the chariots in the fire. Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. There's a lot of stuff there it's really deep. It's like it's like a little song of Moses in the book of Psalms. Uh, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Self-explanatory. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Therefore will not we fear. So, I was talking with somebody the other day, and they were listening to my testimony. There's a small group of people. And afterwards, the one gentleman said, kind of scary, that the return of the Lord is about to happen, and like what goes on before it, And so afterwards, I was driving home, and I was thinking about what he said and what I'd wished I had said to him. If I had more time, I would have commented on his comment. And what I wanted to say to him also was, if you ever met the Lord like I did, he's a really nice person. He's probably not going to say a bad word to you. And at least when I met the Lord, uh, it was like I realized it was a divine encounter. This guy doesn't look very like society won't take a hold of him like maybe a movie star or something, because it wasn't very beautiful in appearance, but noble. I mean, kind of like character and charm, and you knew he was never going to utter a bad word to you, and so you don't have to fear the Lord if you know the Lord, if you believe in the Lord. He's a very nice person, and you should realize that. Don't be fearing the times that were coming to pass on the earth. That Psalm 46 talks about it. I put it away. I wanted to talk a little bit more about a few other places, and so 46. Though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof, Selah. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God. That's a great parable. There is a river. The river is the word of God. And the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God. The city of God. Where's the city of God? Everybody's concentrating on Jerusalem and that place and the people and the land. Yes, I agree with that. But the city of our God is not so much a buildings and a place. The city of our God is the people. And the 10 tribes were scattered first, and they came over the Caucasus Mountains and settled in Europe. The Caucasians, the countries that end in Ish, are some of the tribes of Israel. Ish is man, people, or husband in Hebrew. And then they migrated from Europe over to here in North America. And so we're finding that the city of our God is still, you have the original people who came out of Egypt with Moses, a mixed multitude with the Hebrews. They're all considered Israel. And then Israel became a nation, the civil war, and the 10 tribes of the north got kicked out of the land first. So they're still the people of God, the descendants, the father, son, father, mother's children. They're the descendants of Israel, the city of our God. So they're still scattered, some of them in the diaspora. They don't even know that they have Hebrew roots. But the city that makes them glad, there's many believers here in the United States that are, if you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you're grafted into Israel. And so they know the river. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God. When you know that rivers in the scriptures is talking about religion, just go back into Genesis. I think I talked about it in the old video that I erased, so I'll have to talk about it in the future. Maybe I'll do it right now, but let me finish reading this. And the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. We are the temple. Our bodies are called temporary dwellings. It's also can be called a tabernacle, or in Hebrew a sukkah, sukkot for plural. And so the tabernacles, the holy place, God dwells in us. We're going to sit in the Lord's throne with him. Doesn't mean we're going to be the Lord and have all his power, but we're not going to be God, but we're going to sit in his throne with him, the scripture says. So he's going to obviously allow us to sit with him. He's going to share his who he is, what he can do as God. And so the holy places of the tabernacles of the Most High. We are the tabernacle of the Most High. He dwells in me and dwells in you and them, all by faith in Jesus Christ. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her. And that right early. I know when I was a little boy, I was stuck in my eye by a stick and blinded, and I prayed to the Lord and he healed my eye. And I was like 5, 6, or 7 years old. And then the heathen raged, the kingdoms were moved. He uttereth his voice and the earth melted. So these are signs of the judgments. Maybe some people call it the beginning of sorrows, but we see the unbeliever raging against believers. Like in China, unbelievers totally took over and made it criminal to be anything but what the communists want you to think. Anybody who's a believer in Jesus Christ or Falun or other religions, they're persecuted. So the heathen are raging. And you find in the United States, the heathen are raging because they're mostly in the Democratic Party. They don't really believe in the God of Israel or the Bible. They don't really like Bible believers or the scriptures. So the heathen are raging over here. Look they're putting up a fence around the United States Capitol as the trucker convoy is on its way. What are they fearing the American people for? The American people are standing up for their rights. And for them to put a fence around the Capitol is like a communist country. They put a protection around themselves, and they're willing to kill you if you don't accept their belief system and obey it. But the Christians who are in the convoy, the patriots of the United States, the country, they aren't violent. They're not going to rise up and kill you, but they protest, get your attention. But the ones that the heathen raged, they have this attitude that it's okay to kill people. They need to. And any communist socialist that ever took over in all those other nations, it always ended in a bloodbath for the Christian. And they killed 145,000 a day in China at the revolution, and other nations did as bad as killing many, many millions. But will it happen here in the United States? Because we had a communist regime take power some say through election fraud. And so now they're doing all these terrible things to the people, and and the cost of living and everything has gone uh, out of whack with reality, because on purpose the regime that's doing it so wanted to destroy everything that Trump was doing, and which Trump was serving the people, and he was a servant to the people. But the regime in power is now like a elitist kind of. They see themselves as the king. They give the dictates like in a communist country, and everybody else down below has to follow. But that's not going to happen here in the United States, because American people are free, and it's guaranteed in the Constitution. And we have the right to bear arms, and they didn't take our arms like they did in Australia and Canada, where the people can't fight back because they don't have any arms. The United States, American people are armed to the hilt, and especially in the countryside. And they're not going to allow police do here as they did in Canada, where the police started to just break open the trucks, smashing people's windows, and taking their gas. And they brought in UN troops to look like Canadian police, but they're really UN troops dressed as Canadian police that are, have no connection to the people themselves. So they're obviously going to abuse the people. One lady was trampled on by a horse. The heathen raged. In Canada, the heathen are raging in power right now, and what they're doing is wrong, and they should be arrested. Canada, can stand up and stop a Hitler from accomplishing his desire, which is in the modern day Justin Trudeau. You have a little, what do you call it, Napoleon sitting in the prime minister seat, and you need to take him down and free your country from him and the likes of him. And then here in the United States, we're facing the same kind of evil and power right now. And anyway, the Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge, Selah. And God says here, God, back in verse 5, God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. The bride of Christ is the believer. Okay, God is in the midst of her. As you're a believer in Jesus Christ individually, he dwells in you. Okay, and, you make more room for him. How much God you want, right? So the more you make room for him and become like him, you follow Jesus Christ. He was the pattern. I read it to you in Ezekiel 43 yesterday. So God dwells in us, and you're still under the law, whether you realize it or not. You're not under the law of sin until death. You're under the law of sin like unto grace, But the effect of sin is still death, except for the generation that shall not taste of death. They're going to be translated. They're going to be like Enoch. They're never going to taste of death. The one person before the flood was Enoch that was translated. He walked with God, and God took him. It's the same thing after the flood. There's those of us who are in Christ Jesus, who are disciples of Jesus Christ, and have decided not to follow the ways of the world. We're in the world, but not of the world. And God, through the world, provides for us through, can be a miracle. I've seen many miracles, and or other people. And either way, it's still him working. Every good gift cometh down from the Father of lights. And so I had to rebuke somebody on the creation something YouTube chat the other day. They were they said something that I think was contrary to the scriptures, and so I just wanted to correct it, but I'll talk about that another time. Just getting too divergent here, I guess, for maybe some people. But what we're happening is we're seeing the signs of the times happening in the world, the departure from keeping the law, which is really not the law, it's the teaching. We say the Torah, and many people just have a block in their head. They're going to say the law, but it actually means the teaching. And the whole teaching is just from Genesis to Revelation. And there was man that inserted Old Testament and New Testament. You should actually take that part out of your scriptures and just consider it one Bible. I once call it the Old Testament and the New Testament, because in the Hebrew, the New Testament is called the Brit Hadrasha, which is the renewed covenant. You call the new covenant, but it's like the moon. Is it a new moon? Or no, it's a renewed moon every month, a renewed moon. And the New Testament is the renewed covenant, the same covenant as in the past. The earth is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. They have transgressed the law, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. The everlasting covenant is faith, to believe. And if you believe, then you're going to obey and follow. And if you're worshiping God the way you want to worship God, you've created a God in your own image. That's idolatry, because God says in his word how to worship him. Keep the 7 holy days and the Sabbath days, then do the do's and don't do the don'ts. And so it's important to understand that the signs of the times show us that the departure of society in every country from the Lord and his teachings have caused what's happening, the enemy to rise higher and higher over us on the earth in our individual areas, lives, and localities, states, and highest government levels. It used to be you got elected to serve, but now people are elected because of the elite rich that place people in power, and they generationally keep that power through their cohorts, kind of like nepotism of the rich amongst the rich, who put people in offices and carry out agendas. Like the one agenda that was carried out, they got rid of the graduated income tax. They infiltrated people in seats of power in the United States government. That it used to be that the graduated income tax was different tax rates down here, but if you made more than $2 million in 1 year, everything after that first $2 million was then taxed at 90%. And it was an incentive that the government had by this type of taxation system, so that the people, the owners of the companies, would pay their employees salaries better, or if they didn't, then they were going to be taxed and the money would come back to the government to be used for the people anyway, in public roads and bridges and etc., and like parks and swimming pools and different things. But the people infiltrated into power and they got rid of the graduated income tax. And instead of having to pay the people salaries higher, or if they aren't going to pay salaries higher, they're going to give it back to the government in the form of a tax. Well, they just paid themselves rich. And I'm aware of John Rockwood Sr., who was on the board of the Dean Foods Company. His wife's father started that company. And he used to sit on boards of other people's companies because they all know each other. And back when John was getting $300 an hour for all his 40 years, he was taxed at 90% after the first $2 million. But today they don't have that. And so they heap to themselves huge amounts of millions and billions of dollars, and yet don't pay the employees more. They'll argue over if this employee who makes $14,300 this year, if he's going to make $14,400 next year. And that they argue over $100 increase per person that they're talking about. And so, but yet they won't pay the government any taxes, and they won't pay, they'll pay a way smaller amount, but they pay themselves in salary in millions and billions. So the money, one person doesn't need more than $2 million a year to live. And so now people are mega millions and mega billions, and the people who are actually working aren't getting anything. And the money's not going also back into the society to improve the roads or make train systems or, just most fantastic society. The money is just being pocketed into individuals, billions, millions. And so anyway, the disobediences of men in not keeping the commandments have caused the enemy to rise higher over us in power. And that's why you're seeing the things that are happening at the levels of government that make your head spin. Because how could people be so uh, ill thinking and just not serve the people and not prosper everybody's life, right? So uh, perhaps they feel that these communist nations that have one leader over them that make the people do what they want, and fear of death is penalty, extreme situations in these communist countries. Maybe they need to think that they need to have that here to compete with them, but it's not true. The United States is founded on the Christian Judeo values, which our God of Israel, who we know individually, at least most of, I think, the patriot countryside people know, so that we know the God of Israel. He revealed himself to us. His word reveals himself to us. And we know what he's done, what he's doing, what he's going to do. But the heathen that are raging are like those that don't believe in the Bible, the God of the Bible, and the creationist point of view for the creation, but they believe in evolution. And so the heathen are raging. They're raging in this country to take over the country. They're taking over the country in Canada because that's the only reason why they're doing it to the people. They have no moral conscience to obey their constitutional laws or their charter of the people's charter of the rights of the people. And so you're seeing heathen rage in today's world. The enemy is rising higher and higher over you because you're not obeying the Lord. If you're eating pork and you're saying you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you're as Adam and Eve. You've sinned and you missed the mark. To be a disciple of Jesus Christ is to obey his word. Sundown Friday night to sundown Saturday night is the seventh day. It's the day of rest. You don't kindle a fire on the Sabbath. You don't prepare food. That you gather with others. So these things you have to put in practice in your life. And the older you get and the more you practice each year, day to day, week to week, month to month, you find that you realize the familiarity with it becomes easier to do. And you get older, the world doesn't look so great anymore. You just want the next life. So the next life in heaven, this is eternal. This Holy Scriptures, the Torah is eternal. So you should be willing to be a true disciple of Jesus Christ and obey what he said. Dietary laws are very important because you're the temple. Okay, he doesn't want to put his spirit inside of a body that's full of gunky stuff that he doesn't want to, I guess, in the spirit, it's the life of the flesh is in the blood. And so the spirit and the blood, they're like, how do you explain it? The scripture talks about it. So anyway, let me read here again. Come, behold the works of the Lord, what desolations he hath made in the earth. Yeah, so these things are coming to pass, and God's the signs of God's presence. He uttereth his voice in the thunder, the earth quakes from his anger. He has his way in the whirlwind, the lightnings are his arrows, the clouds are the dust of his feet. He touches the earth and it's on fire. He touches the earth and it melts. So the desolations, you see, he maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. So the end of the earth, I guess wars are going to cease then. He breaketh the bow. I don't mean to laugh. It's very serious. I guess we're going to have wars until the very end. He breaketh the bow. He cutteth the spear and is under. He burneth the chariot in the fire. So the cars are the chariots. So I think there's going to be some fire that's going to come. Unless the what do they call it? The people that don't want to use cars anymore, they want to let us use electric vehicles. You can't have electric vehicles. They just can't pull the weight and sustain the power for long. If you set up a battery system in a car that uses Tesla energy, where the energy just flows through the air to a vehicle, so that we don't have to pay somebody at an electric pump like we have a gas pump, electricity should be totally free. The Tesla design, which they still know how to do, set up towers all over the earth, and electricity would power any battery anywhere. It's just transferred through the air without a cord or a wire for freely. They have the technology to do it, but they don't let the society to be free to have technology like that because they want everybody to work for them. to pay for their energy, pay for their electricity, pay for their gas and all that stuff. And we know why there's a cost to that, because you have to build a power plant and pay the people to run the power plant, so you have to have some kind of income. But if you had set up a one-time system that's the Tesla system, then the power would be free, and men would be free. Imagine having your house on a platform that has like fans, you could have total power forever, make your house float. You float wherever you want, move it through the sky, settle wherever. But they won't let people be free. The things that they're doing are always so that you have to be a slave to somebody else and pay them. But again, tangential. It's instead of having a society of a culture of life, we have a society that's a culture of death. And the proof of that is they abort the babies in the mother's wombs. Abortion, it's murder. And then they, education isn't free, healthcare isn't free. All that stuff should be free. They the slavery to the insurance industry, the car insurance and the health insurance and property insurance, or all that stuff. It's such a racket. They make you have to have these things by law, and then those that tell you have to have it through the government, they then put the price at it at a fortune, And there's so many of us and then they pay themselves millions and billions and trillions, and that's not right. So their 1 hour of a day is no different than my 1 hour in a day. But granted, some things are a little more costly to have a system going, but still, it's amazing that the love of money is the root of all evil. And so people want other people to serve them and be their slaves and not pay them as well as they could, so that they could have a better life and improve the lives of the people in their families. But we have the heathen rising higher and higher in power, accumulating the wealth, and then using the people as slave servants to fight their wars and die. So you see what I'm talking about? He maketh the worst. Okay, I read that. Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted among the heathen, and I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. Selah. The God of Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel, the God of Israel. So God's going to make the heathen realize who he is. So I think it's going to be with the rapture really soon. I think this Passover, I think you should have wedding garments ready. I think you should do the Passover even if you can't get up to Israel. Do it where you are, have a gathering of believers, and start looking now about what it is to keep the Passover Seder, the meal that night, and to watch for the Lord. So we're seeing, because of the disobediences of ourselves individually and collectively, and we're punished as a nation collectively. And so God said that these would be the signs of just before his return, the Lord. And so we have the wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and pestilence and famines and wars and rumors of wars and hurricanes and tornadoes and fires and floods and volcanic action and tsunamis. These things all are signs that are telling us, and even the sign that the enemy is rising higher and higher above us in seats of power and government that don't have mercy. But you can look at Trudeau in Canada, and look at Muslim caliphates throughout history in different places like China and Russia, where they killed millions of people. The enemy is rising higher in power in the United States and Canada, and they're not going to have any problems bringing in UN troops to carry out their dictates, if it even means to hurting the people, even killing them, because that's what communists do. And that's why they brought in UN troops into Canada, because Trudeau knows that his own police force is not going to fight against the people. And a lot of them stood up with the people. And so he had to get somebody in there that has no love for the people. That's why they bring in UN troops. UN troops are not allowed in the United States. You have the right in the United States to actually shoot a UN soldier, remove him from the land if by force and death, because the United States government, we're not allowed to, foreign troops are not allowed to be housed on our soil. So if they come in secretly, pretend to be Americans, military or police, you find out, you can execute them. The Constitution gives the right, and because it's an enemy who's come upon the land to hurt the people, the Commonwealth, and the city of our God. As I was reading, the city is the people. The people make up a city. So if you didn't have Jerusalem, but you didn't have Israel, if you just were out in the world, then you realize like God scattered the 10 tribes first, and then the 2 tribes last. That they were still the people of God, though wherever they went in the world, the city of our God got scattered throughout the cities of the world. But so we know that some of the people of God are still here in the United States, Canada, Europe, in the diaspora, the 10 tribes. But the enemy is rising higher and higher over them because they've forgotten their identity. They stopped obeying what their fathers and their fathers and their fathers and their fathers taught, which is the Holy Scriptures. And the New Testament, which is really the Brit Hadrasha, the renewed covenant, don't put the words Old and New Testament in there. That was a man's creation. It was not from God the Father. It's actually just one book, from Genesis to Revelation. And the New Testament, it's very valid to say the renewed covenant, too. The renewed, it's the same covenant in the Old as it is in what you call the New. It's one book. The renewed covenant, it's the eternal covenant, eternal, throughout all your generations, forever. He writes it in 4 ways. God says in the Scriptures that it's the eternal decree, forever, throughout all your generations, forever, or eternal decree, forever, throughout all your generations. And I forget the 4th way he says it. But if I remember, I'll tell you. But there's 4 ways he says it. So, we're still in Bible times. If you want to see the reverse and our freedoms restored, you have to obey on the individual level. We're still under the law. If you think the law is done away with, you're wrong. As I began to speak, the very fact the law is in place allows for you to have Jesus Christ as your substitute in your place for your sin. He took our penalty of death upon himself, because God allowed in the Torah, in the teachings, that a perfect sinless sacrifice could be made in your place. And so that's why we know we're still under the law. It's still in effect. So you want to receive that part of the law, but you don't want to receive the dietary laws, like don't eat pork, or if you have chickens, you don't reach your hand and take the chicken's egg while she's sitting there. You take her away, and then you take her egg, stuff like that. And so anyway, thanks be to the Lord, we're under grace, sin unto grace, let's call it. It's not sin unto death, even though we're all going to taste of death unless the Lord comes. If we are seeing that this is the blessed generation that shall not taste of death. So if you realize you're part of that generation that he's going to appear in, you're going to be like Enoch, translated. The one person that's translated after the flood is the multi-member body of Jesus Christ. And so it's going to be many people that are going to be translated. And just like Enoch was, then those who are left behind, and there are going to be the heathen that rage. But the tribulation is for them to bring them to Jesus Christ. And it's going to be a horrific wrath. God's pouring out his wrath on a disobedient and unbelieving world in order to bring these people to himself. And if they don't come, then they're going to suffer physical death and eternal death. They missed the rapture, so if you're left behind, you're going to go through the tribulation. You are going to taste of death. And your resurrection, if you become a believer, your resurrection isn't until 1,000 years later, after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Those of us who going in the rapture are going to reign with Christ for 1,000 years on the Sabbath day, eternal rest day. It's no work is done. The animals don't eat the animals. It's a whole different dichotomy in creation. So it's the example is the 7 days of the week. On the seventh day you rest. So the seventh day when the Lord appears, he takes his body of believers to himself, and we're changed from our sinful flesh to a glorified state. It's like we're entering into that Sabbath day, and the next 1,000 years is the Sabbath rest. You don't work on it. You don't kindle fire. Of course, you don't have to work, because you don't have to work to sustain your life, for shelter, food, and clothing anymore. It's the Sabbath rest. So anyway, we're the generation, we're seeing the signs. I hope you realize that. And it might be pretty obvious that it would be Passover. The Lord has become our Passover. So very high possibility of that time that of his appearing will be this Passover. We know it's in the near future, this generation. And we look at Israel as a generation. And it's like 74 or something. And so anyway, I talked a lot already on this video. Not too much, 36 minutes. And so I think I'll just cut it off there. Wanted you all to just hear that Psalm 46 and realize it sounds like a very shortened form of the Song of Moses. And so anyway, if you read this Song of Moses, you read the consequences that for departing from the God of Israel. That's why you're seeing the kind of world we have today. And the only way for the Israelite nations of people, which not just in the land of Israel today, but in Western Europe, even Russia, and throughout the Americas, the tribes migrated over to North America, Canada, and United States mostly. Then a lot of people throughout the Americas became believers in Jesus Christ, so they're grafted into Israel. So if you realize you're an Israelite by faith or natural branch, then you're going to want to change the outcome that we're headed towards. You want to get back to the Lord yourself, and the new command that God gave to Moses, to Joshua, just before they went into the Promised Land. God said that an individual is now responsible when he sees his brother sin, is to go, or sister, you go to them and tell them you're sinning, stop sinning, let me help you stop sinning. And so that was the very new command that God gave to us through our fathers, our ancestors, before they went into the Promised Land with Joshua. So it's still valid for us today. And so I see the media, the television, lying all the time. Many people call it the fake news, but the media is propaganda. And there's things I know about the medical establishment. They say they don't know this or that or how to cure that, but they do. So are they lying? Job security don't make somebody well. But anyway, just have all this hope that people around me in society would decide to actually obey the Lord and follow him and help others to come to faith and hold each other accountable. And then we could avert this enemy rising higher and higher over us, as we've seen the heathen rage, like Trudeau in Canada suppressing the people and the freedoms, the medical establishment being used by the communist socialists to take away the rights of an individual, to change from a God-given rights that are enshrined in the Constitution to be followed, or to replace that with a dictator that says you can do what I say, when I say, how I say, where I say. That's what's happening in Canada. The people are losing their freedom, And the regime that's in power in Washington right now, it seems to be in that kind of mindset. And so the people, if we want to stop this evil, you have to return to the Lord and obey. Just as you're under the law in the nation that you live in on the earth, you have to follow and obey. When you're a believer in Jesus Christ, you're a disciple of Jesus Christ, you're walking in a new way of life, and that is you're grafted into Israel. And Israel received the Torah at Mount Sinai. You're part of this congregation to follow the Torah. You take it upon yourself. He comes to you and invites you and asks you will you follow. The renewed covenant. You calling it the New Testament, but it's the Brit Hadrasha, the renewed covenant. It's the everlasting covenant, the faith. So you're coming out of the world and you're coming back into Israel. And if you never walked in Israel, you find elders and others who are. So with that, I will sign off. This young person up there says, thank you, you're welcome. And be blessed, everyone. I hope your day is, I hope you had or will have a blessed and holy day. And I'm watching for the Lord. I hope you're watching for the Lord, because we are that blessed generation that shall not pass away before his return. And I'm going in the rapture, and I'd like you to go too. So I need you, by word of mouth, to go to another person and make sure that that person tells the person that they speak to that, speak to another person and keep the chain going. It's called the corderless coconut in the Hawaiian Islands. It's the grapevine. You speak, open your mouth and speak to somebody else, help them understand what's going on in the world. And we could quickly reach everybody in the world, okay? To get everybody aware that it's possibly this Passover, the Lord's coming, if not sooner. But I think it's going to be on his appointed days that he meets with us. So a Sabbath day or a feast, a holy feast day of his, which are called Sabbath days too. So I love you all. Lord willing, I'll be on tomorrow.